Professor Brain Brown's research shows that vulnerability fosters good emotional and mental health. It is a sign of courage. We become more resilient and brave when we embrace who we truly are and what we are feeling. The Vulnerable Scientist podcast is a space for scientists to tell their honest and authentic stories. I am your host, Sarah Nyakeri, who happens to be a scientist, informal science communicator, and I help scientists create personal websites. If you want to support this show, go to www.patreon.com/thevulnerable-scientist. You can also follow this podcast on all social media platforms at TV Scientist Pod. Do you know the meaning of your name, Amani?
In Arabic it means hope.
Mm-hmm.
But I do believe in Swahili it means power, no?
Peace.
I can't remember. I googled it. Peace. Oh, okay.
How did you know that it is a Swahili name?
Because years ago when Google was invented, I googled my name. I'm pretty sure a lot of people Google their names. I'm like, and then I saw this famous American football player, a man called Amani. I was like, what? There are men called Amani. And then I found out it's Swahili. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a man called Amani actually, and there's a woman called Amani. Both of them are celebrities.
Yeah.
So you also mentioned that you came from from your name side you have an Arab. What do you call
heritage,
this?
Yeah.
Heritage,
yeah. So both of my parents are from the Middle East.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you're Swedish.
Well, I'm born in Lebanon, but I grew up in Sweden.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right.
Yeah.
So at this point, we're talking about you. That's how we got to that song that you're singing about making the change. Do you want to talk about what was happening at that point that made you have that breakdown?
Yeah. Oh my God. Now we're going to go really deep. And this is what some people don't like to hear, by the way. The truth can sometimes hurt or be unpleasant or uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I see this a lot with some of the people I know personally who don't deal. And now with their shit. So let's use another analogy. And this one might be a little bit disgusting. But let's say you have a plumbing problem, okay? And you have that shit stuck there, right? And you just ignore it. And you ignore it. And you ignore it. And you pretend it's not there. You pretend it's not there. And then at some point, what's going to happen?
It's going to be clogged and you're going to have all the shit.
It's going to get clogged and the flood and all the shit is going to come up to the surface. So I hope that image is like, oh, I don't want that. And this is exactly what happens to us with our emotional shit, with our emotional garbage that we don't deal with. And this is what happened to me at that age. You know, for some people, it happens early. You know, some people might have a breakdown, or I want to call it breakthrough, because you don't necessarily break down and crumble into pieces. You break open. Like it's almost...
It's like a balloon or something that grows and becomes a balloon, then bursts. So you break open.
You break open, yeah. Or if you think of these animals that shed skin, what do? Like they shed the skin and they break that layer. And what comes? It comes a new version comes out.
Yeah.
But you had to break through that old shed, that old layer had to break for you to emerge again as a new person. So, but if we don't deal with the shit, what happens? We're stuck in that old layer and we're just stuck and it just feels so freaking uncomfortable. And then we're just going to suffer so much until it's not bearable anymore. And sometimes that can lead to disease, whether it's physical, mental, problems at work, in our relationships, health, financially. So that is why I say, if I'm going to use the harsh words so you really remember it, deal with the shit. Deal with it. Don't deny it. Don't suppress it. Don't ignore it, because it will come up to the surface sooner or later. It will. So this is what happened to me. At that age, I hadn't dealt with my shit. I was just like living life and pretending everything is okay, you know, zero vulnerability, zero like what's going on the inside. Why am I feeling this? I was like, I'm good. Like socializing, going out, having fun, having money, working, la la la, traveling. But what about that stuff that happened in my life in the past that I had just pushed under the rug and I didn't want to deal with it? That stuff was coming out. And it was like knocking very loudly, like, hello, you haven't dealt with me. Hello. Clean up your shit. So I was forced to. But then I remember having this very serious conversation with a close person, and they said, you need therapy. Go and get therapy, because I don't think you can overcome this on your own. And I was still in denial. I didn't want to face it. So I'm like, no, I'm going to this refugee camp and I'm going to rescue the world. So I basically went for the wrong reasons to help. Yeah, I went there with an empty cup, trying to fill my cup with other people's pain, thinking if I heal them, if I help them, my pain will disappear. It doesn't. Actually, I came back feeling even more empty, even more like hopeless. I was like, I wasn't able to really fix these people's problems, because the refugee crisis is still ongoing. It's not something you fix in 3 months and by being a volunteer. And I came back and still being very miserable. So what happened during this time, I started reading books about personal development. How do you become happy? And I started binge watching all these YouTube videos I could get my hands on, you know, happiness and how to feel good. And I was being what? A scientist. I was doing research. I was doing radical research. Like, you know how we sometimes get obsessed with our research. And I kept doing that for like a year. Non-stop reading and studying personal development, psychology, how do you change your behavior. So until the point I got it. I got the theory. You know how you get it? You go like, I know what I'm supposed to do. But guess what? Nothing had changed. Like, what's the point in knowing, and you have the knowledge, but nothing has changed, because knowledge on its own is not power. This is like, sometimes we mistake information for transformation. Just because you have the information doesn't mean you've transformed.
Two different things.
Oh my God. Transformation requires work. Transformation requires consistent action taking until you have that new change. Right? So I tell you, if you're trying to change a behavior and you read a book about how do I give up smoking or how do I become healthy, reading a book is not going to change that.
No.
And same thing with happiness. You know, I was trying so hard to find that quick shortcut, like how to become happy. Come on, I want to like get rid of this pain and misery. There was no shortcut. So I started then realizing I need help. I can't do this on my own, because reading books didn't change anything. So I started going to these personal development workshops, because I still was resisting therapy. You know, back then it wasn't such a normal thing. Today everybody talks about therapy. It's like going to the dentist, you know, my therapist. But back then it was still kind of like something you would be embarrassed about, you know. So I didn't go, but I was okay going to workshops. So I started going to these workshops, and I was paying thousands of euros. It was crazy. I mean, I was back then still a science teacher, right? I didn't have a lot of money, but I was like, I need help. And then transformation started happening. That's when I started to change, because you need to experience the information. Once you experience it, and experience means you're implementing it, you're using it in your life. Then you start changing.
Okay, so how is the stage of that transformation now?
Oh, it's still ongoing. Because if you think of development, and I love it, let's go back to the topic of my science, developmental biology. Development never stops, does it? Until the day we die. We're going to continuously grow as living beings. That's one of the criteria for being alive. It's growth.
So that transformation is still ongoing up to today.
Ongoing. And I think that's the beauty of it, because that's what makes life so interesting. Imagine it would be the same all the time.
Okay, so now you've done your refugee thing for 3 to 4 months or 3 months. Then what happens after that?
So again, I come back to zero. So my base has always been Sweden, where my family, like my siblings and my mom. So I go back to Sweden again, unemployed, with no idea what to do. But then I decide, I'm just going to apply for a job as a teacher. So because that's what I know, that's what I was good at. So I got a job. I got a job in a school with 90% immigrants and refugees, and I picked that school for that reason, because I had been in the refugee camp, so I wanted to continue helping these kids. But I kind of knew, I mean, deep down in my heart, I knew that I'm not supposed to be in the school system. I'm not supposed to be a teacher. When I started doing personal development, that work was resonating with me so much. So I felt that's what I could imagine myself doing. I could see myself being a trainer, helping people going through the transformation I went through. But again, there's this fear, if you're going to jump into a new field and uncertainty, it's scary, new territory. So I'm like, no, let me stick to what I know, teaching in schools. But so I went back and I taught, and then it just got like, again, if you're in a place that you're not supposed to be in, at some point it just gets more and more uncomfortable. So I ended up quitting this job because the school was just too crazy. Like, kids were having knives and violence, and parents being completely crazy. And I was like, oh my God, being a school in such an area with immigrants and the high rates of kids with rough background, like it requires so much, like having a thick skin, and I couldn't deal with it. It was just too much. So I ended up leaving that job. And I joined a startup that my friend had founded 2 years earlier. It's called Science Matters. And I joined it because, again, I wanted to explore something new, something different, but also something that makes an impact. And his vision was to help change the publishing system, which probably you guys are familiar with. It's broken. So the idea of this startup was to take small data, like published data, right? Instead, like pieces of the puzzle, instead of waiting until you have the whole story. And then as a community, I mean, it's a beautiful, thought, but practically it's very difficult to implement, right? Practically, it would be like, well, who's going to get the funding then? If I'm going to publish this data, and then the next group publishes this data, and the next one, who gets the funding? Who gets the credit? Who's the first author? So it was very difficult to get scientists to publish with us, because it was something new, it was something different. So unfortunately, that startup didn't last. But it was an experience, again, that really helped me grow. I learned so many things. I developed new abilities. I learned the behind the scenes of a startup, what you shouldn't do, what you should do. And then I actually ended up getting fired for the first time in my life. Yes. I had a huge fight with the CEO, and because we were friends, and we disagreed on some issues, and then I just got fired. And that was the moment where, again, I said, okay, Amani, you're at this crossroad. So you can choose whether you go back to the familiar world, which is teaching, but you already know you don't want that, or you go for your dream.
Which is?
What I'm doing today.
So you immediately started that after that happened? Or you waited for some time?
No, I didn't come up with it. I mean, I knew that this is what I wanted to do, but I was having so much resistance and fear because there was like, how? You know, that's often the question. You know what you want many times. Can you resonate? Like, you know what you want, but you don't know how. You were telling me this earlier. I know what I want. I know what's the contribution I want to create.
Yeah.
But how do I do it? I knew what I wanted and I knew why. Those two things were very clear. But the how kept me from taking action. And this is what I would love to share with people. You know, like the how, sometimes you don't need to have the 20, 30, 50 steps figured out. Like sometimes we might only know the first 5 steps.
Yeah.
Start with the first 5 steps. And then you uncover the next 5 steps and the next 5 steps. And 1 year later you realize, oh my God, I've climbed like 200 steps. But don't wait until you know all the 200 steps from day one. This is what stops so many people. So I was stuck in that mentality, this analysis paralysis. And I was like, how do I do this? How do I start my business as a coach and trainer? I don't know how. And what if I fail? And what if I don't make money? And da, 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 da. So what did I do? I hired a coach, a business coach, coach. And that's why coaching is so powerful. Because Einstein says it very well. He's like, the same mind that created the problem cannot see the solution. Let's repeat that. The same mind, so I'm paraphrasing, I don't know the exact words, but something like this. The same mind that created the problem cannot find the solution. Because you're stuck in this mind. So, and this is why I say information and knowledge is not the key to transformation. So sometimes you need a disruptor, and that's what a coach does. A coach disrupts that mind, that bubble that you're stuck in. And boom, all of a sudden you start seeing things differently. Why? Because you had a mindset shift. And then you can get into action. So this is what happened. With the help of this coach, she was able to help me overcome some of that resistance, some of that fear, like what was stopping me from taking action. And then starting the business became much easier. So within 3 to 4 months, I had my first paying clients.
Wow.
As a coach. Yeah. So during these years, I was doing training. Like I was getting my certification, I was getting trained. So I had the training, but I didn't have the confidence to do it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How has it been?
Oh, I mean, I'm not going to tell you it's just amazing because, of course, running a business, it's like a roller coaster. But I like this comparison with the bamboo. I just shared a post about it last week on LinkedIn. Maybe you've heard about the bamboo, you know, like the first 5 years of the bamboo plants, you don't see anything, nada, like nothing. Like you just keep like watering and there's nothing visible happening, right? But what's happening underneath is the root system is being built. Yeah. And it's just like getting deeper and deeper and deeper. So that the 4th year of the bamboo, that's when the bud starts coming out. And then all of a sudden, the 5th year, the bamboo goes like whoosh, like a rocket. It can go up to 30 meters in 5 weeks. And this is what happens with business. You know, sometimes people think, yeah, I want to start a business. Let's do it. It's going to be so easy and fun. And no, it's not easy. It's kind of like the bamboo. Like you need to give so much nurturing to the roots to make the system solid so that you can have that beautiful success that people see on the outside. Yeah. You know, people see it on the outside, but they don't see the background story. The work you've put in to be able to build that business. So I say starting a business is probably it's like a boot camp in personal growth. If you want to grow as a person, start a business. Because it forces you to look on the inside when it comes to your fears, when it comes to your doubts, when it comes to learning practical things like how do I manage money, you know, finances, like how do I do sales, Like, can I learn to be comfortable? Negotiation. There are so many things you have to learn.
You said sales negotiation, right?
Marketing. Communication. Yeah.
So at this point, you've told us the story in brief of your life. It is in brief of how your life has been in terms of career, basically. Basically, let's say that. What are the laws that you faced that you have not mentioned?
Well, I thought I mentioned some lows, but you want more?
Yeah.
Sarah likes to go into the lows. Yeah, I like this this storytelling technique that I learned from this famous coach, Lisa Nichols. I don't know if you've heard of her.
Yeah.
Where she says the best way to touch people's hearts is actually when you go low, when you go into the valley, right? She calls it the dip. Like, you start by showing people all the success and achievement and the great things you have achieved, and then you tell them about the low point. But then you don't want to leave people in the valley because that's depressing. You want to take people up again out of the valley, because that gives them hope and inspiration. So there, I just taught you guys some storytelling technique that is so powerful. You can use it literally in a job interview when people ask you, tell me about a time you had a conflict. Tell me about a time when you overcame a challenge. If you use the dip technique, it's so powerful because it shows that you are able to overcome obstacles and you have awareness of how you do it. That's key.
Not just knowing how, but being aware that you know how it's done.
Yeah. That you know how I did it. I know how I overcame that. So if I'm going to talk about a low, since I've already talked about it in my newsletter this morning, I'll share that one as well. So one low, it's part of my personal life, but it has affected all of my life. You know, it's affected my career, it's affected my health, it's affected my relationships, like you name it. It had to do with me growing up in an abusive family home environment. And at the age of 17, we literally had to leave that home, my mother, my siblings, and I, and we had to run away and hide from my own father. Because he was violent, he was not safe. Like, it was not safe for us to be with him anymore, right? And he was not willing to accept the fact that we did not want to live with him. Unfortunately, he was mentally ill. But then, at the 13 years later, he ended up passing away in a heart attack, all alone. And that was really sad because I had already grieved the loss of my father as a 17-year-old. I already felt while my father was alive, I had lost him because he wasn't there. He wasn't the father that I needed. Quite the opposite. He was a harmful father. He was causing pain and danger, and for me and my family. So can you imagine? This is basically all my upbringing. So from being a child until 17, I was in an environment that was abusive. Not everyday abuse, but people don't sometimes understand when you have an abusive parent as a child. It's like living in a war zone that sometimes has, you know how a war zone sometimes have, what do you call it? Peace fire? What do you call it when they're not shooting?
I don't know.
When they cease fire, when they say, when they cease fire and they say, oh, it's peace, we're not fighting. It's kind of like that. It's kind of living like, you don't know when the fire is going to happen again, right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, like there might be something all of a sudden, you don't know. So you're always on your tippy toes as a child, not feeling safe in your own home environment. So this actually, I'm reading a lot about trauma these days. I'm reading this beautiful book called What Happened to You by Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey. And I love it because they say, let's use a different word instead of telling people what's wrong with you, you know, why are you depressed, or why are you angry, or why are this, like we were labeling people as something is wrong with them. Let's ask what happened to you. Because when you start reading about trauma and read the neuroscience about trauma, it is so fascinating. You know, it literally changes how our brain works. It changes the physiology. It changes our stress response. So that means even stress today, and I'm a grown-up, if you've had like a lot of trauma as a child, you become sensitized. You become more sensitive to stress. So as small things can like activate your fear or stress response, versus a person who might had a safe upbringing where it was stable, they have more resilience, right? Things are not going to get them out of balance easily. Good news is, though, for those of you who studied neuroscience, our brain is plastic. We have neuroplasticity. So you can heal trauma. You can heal a lot of these wounds. And some people might be thinking, trauma, I'm not traumatized. Like, I didn't have an abusive father, and I don't have any...
What trauma you're talking about?
Yeah, like trauma can be small things. It doesn't have to be abuse or sexual violence, you know, any of that. It could literally be like, as a child, your mother had to, I don't know, she was hospitalized for a month and you were without a mom for a month as a child. That could have created trauma. Because as a child, you don't understand the world. You don't understand what's going on. So you feel abandoned.
Yeah.
Right? So that stays until we resolve it. So we need to resolve these things. So I would say, if you ask me what's the low, this is the low. Like having lived with a father like that. But at the same time, my father has been my biggest teacher in my life. My biggest teacher, because he taught me how to forgive, because I really had to practice forgiveness so like on a deep level. And I'm still learning. I still think there are things I haven't let go of.
Yeah.
I realize forgiveness is like an onion. It's like an onion, and there's layers. There's another one, and there's another one. And the same thing with this personal growth stuff that I've been doing. It also feels like that. It's just layers after layers. But and that's why I love the meaning of my name, Hope, because I have a lot of hope. And I have a lot of hope for people that you can heal. We can heal. We can recover from these kind of experiences. You know, these things don't have to define our future. It doesn't have to go bad. Like you can go through horrible things in your life and childhood, and sometimes people experience horrible things as adults. You know, they might not experience this in their childhood, but we can use it as fuel to grow. There's this beautiful saying by, what's his name? Thich Nhat Hanh, this Buddhist monk, who says, there is no lotus without mud. So the lotus flower. So there cannot be a beautiful lotus flower without the mud. We need the mud. Like in the mud, there is nutrients and the fertilizer for the flower to grow.
Yeah.
So this is how I see these adversities we have in life don't have to become trauma.
Yeah.
If we learn the tools and we have resources to deal with the adversity when it happens, it doesn't have to traumatize you. And the beautiful message in this book, and I love it, they say that what really helps people to deal with adversity is feeling connected to other people. So if you have healthy relationships, if you have a good community, if you have connection to your culture and to your environment, that is a great buffer. So whatever adversity you're dealing with, you don't have to become traumatized by it.
So, okay. All right. Thanks for sharing that. What other low have you faced?
More than that? Oh my God. I think that's like the biggest ever low. I don't think, but I think, let's say that this is like the deepest valley that I've had in my life. And then all the other valleys are linked to this. You know, all the other lows that I've had when it comes to my career and my health and my relationships are somehow linked to that original low, because what we go through in childhood does affect how we show up in adulthood.
Yeah.
And that's why it's good to go back to that original experience, to heal that, deal with that, forgive your parents, forgive yourself, and then realize that, you know, we're all human beings and we're all here learning. I love what Blair Singer said recently. He's my trainer and mentor, and he was asking us in a Zoom call, he's like, who am I? Ask yourself, who am I? And then everybody's like writing down all these like, oh, I'm a scientist, or I'm a teacher, or I'm a trainer, or I'm like this and I'm that, and I'm like. And then he said, do you want to know who I am? And everybody was like, yeah, tell us. We're so curious. He's like, I'm an experiment.
Oh. You're not a product that has been like already published or rather produced.
Yeah.
You constantly...
It's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
And if you're an experiment, guess what? If you're an experiment, you have room to fail, because that's part of experimenting.
Yes.
You're giving yourself space to fail, to not know the outcome, to figure things out. And if you see yourself like that, you have way more self-compassion, that even if I don't know, and if I fail and I made mistakes, hey, I'm an experiment. I'm learning. I'm here to learn and grow. And so that's why, if you ask me, what is my low? Like, you know, literally, if you draw the low like this, it's a dip. And then you just look at it upside down, it's a high. Mm-hmm. So if you see life like this, like, I know you guys can't see what I'm doing, but I'm like drawing like a roller coaster. Imagine we're on a roller coaster. It's like down and up, dip and up, dip and up. But wait a second, we can flip that, and then the lows becomes the high.
Yeah.
Because what? The lows are part of the experiment that is allowing you to have the high. Without the low, we can't have the high. Without the high, we cannot have the low. So instead of just labeling things in life like
otherwise
good or
it won't be a high.
Huh?
Otherwise it won't be high if you didn't have the low.
Yeah. And then we get stuck in what's good and what's bad in life. And did I do a good decision or bad decision? Or was that a bad thing that happened in my life? Or was it a good thing? You know, me having a father like that, like, you know, when I was younger, I would have this victim mentality, like, why me? Why me? Why me? Why couldn't I have a normal dad like everybody else? But that doesn't really help. To think in those terms, instead of labeling it as like this bad, horrible thing. Why me? Like, wow, I got to experience that. Like, dude, and like that low gave me the power and the fuel to create the life that I have today. Because maybe if I didn't have that extreme low, I wouldn't go so extremely high in my life. I would just stay, you know,
same
neutral.
thing. Yeah.
Right? And what does that look like? If this is on a heart monitor, this line, what does that equal? Death.
Mind blown.
Yeah.
I like your analogies. They're so, I don't know. They're so relatable. They just make you see, you know, but you don't know. You realize that you actually don't know until you say what you said. And you're like, okay, by the way, that makes sense. Because the line on a monitor, because the line on a monitor is actually, and life is indicated by the what are they called? The up and down
the ups
stuff.
and downs on the AKG. It's like, dude, that's life. Like, that is literally life. If your line is this, you're dead. Sorry, dude. So I say, let's embrace the highs and lows. Embrace them. You know, and don't take it for granted. Don't go like, oh, no, my life is perfect. Let me just stay here on the high. I don't want to go into the low. Please, please, please. I'm like, dude, but like, it's part of it. And that's when I think we can really, you know, vulnerability. I mean, that's the name of your podcast. Like, vulnerability is being okay with that. Being okay that our life is not perfect. We're not perfect. We don't have all the answers figured out. We're an experiment. We're learning. And if we can do that, I think we can enjoy the experiment much more.
In this experiment, there are highs that happen. Take us through that.
The highs, well, the highs are definitely, you know, when I'm able to, and I mean, this sounds like silly but I think really altruism, it's pure selfishness. like wanting to help other people. It is all about you feeling good. And I think that's, for me, that's my high. Like, it's almost like a drug. It's like whenever I see that anything I did helped another person, and it doesn't have to be me as a coach. It can literally be me, helping this lady the other day on the bus. And then she gave me this big smile because I got up and I gave her my seat, and she was so grateful. She's like, well, thank you so much. I'm like, yeah, you're welcome. It's
something so, I don't know, kind of normal and tiny and not so kind of significant, but it's something so huge that you see someone smile when you do something. To you, it's not very... It's not like you were losing anything so much, but once you see that smile, you realize, wow.
Yeah. And that's why I believe the highs in life are when we have those interactions with other people. Whether it's like through our work and personal life, just being on the bus. And that's why it's easy to get to highs. It's easy. It doesn't have to be like, that we have to wait for 3 years to get the dream job or to publish or once I have enough money and I buy that house or whatever it is. I mean, we can have a high every day, every moment almost, if we're willing to experience it. And I know this sounds a bit cheesy. I know this sounds a bit like these sayings, seize the day, live in the moment, be present, be grateful. But that's my experience. My experience is when I'm present and when I'm looking into connecting with other people, I literally get a high. I get a high from that.
So could you talk about one high that you've experienced in your journey as a coach, a career coach? That was, that I know them, there are a lot, but what is that thing that you'd like to share?
Yeah, there's so many. I'm just thinking if I should give a specific example or general.
There's a dog barking.
Sorry?
There's a dog
the sound is very sensitive. Yeah, that's what Spain is famous for: motorcycles and dogs.
And taverns. Are they taverns or what are they? Okay.
Taverns? I'm not sure about taverns.
You said
mean tapas. Tapas.
The supercar stuff, like the modification of the thing that you're telling me earlier. They're not what are they called? Something the way you modify it so that it's more loud.
Yeah. I don't know the name of it. For the motorcycle, yeah. Okay, let me think. I think for me, the highs as a trainer and a coach has definitely been the moments when people, and you can see it in their eyes, I find it so fascinating. I really find, and that's why I say our mental and emotional health or well-being is so linked to the physical. It's so linked because when that connection happens, you see it instantly. So I've been able to see, and maybe one day I will ask my clients to be able to publish before and after pictures because when they start the coaching program, their eyes are like
that would be nice. You should do that.
The light. Like I would love to do some scientific research on it, like data, let's have data, not just my observation.
Yeah.
But I've seen this observation how there is no light in their eyes. Like the eyes are just kind of like dull, almost like a zombie walking. Now I'm exaggerating. They're not like dead people, but like there's no liveliness in the eyes, And you know how sometimes you look in people's faces and you just see their eyes radiating, and they're like two stars. That transformation, when I see them going from not having life in their eyes and then going like, sometimes they come to the session and then I see like, oh, there is a shift in their eyes, and their eyes are just like bing. And that comes from when people remember who they are. It's not me who did the work. As a coach, I'm simply a catalyst. I'm a catalyst. I'm helping them remember who they are. But when a person remembers who they are and their true essence, that light shines through. You know, they say that the eyes are the window to the soul. You see it in people's eyes when they come alive. And when you are in that state, when you're in that mind, things become much easier in life. So applying for the job is easier, networking is easier, going to the job interview is easier, because you're full of energy and life. And then these situations aren't that terrifying anymore. So I say that's the transformation that makes me the happiest as a coach, to have been able to contribute to that.
That must be satisfying.
It's like a drug, I tell you. And I have to try hard not to get too addicted to it, because again, it's like, you know, it's not my, how do you say, it's not about me, you know, because sometimes the ego comes in there. It's like, oh, I did this, I did that. Oh, it's all thanks to my brilliance.
Yeah.
No, you know, like I've been giving these tools that I have, and a gift of being able to help people. I'm using it. But they're doing the work. And we're all able to do this, all of us. So transformation, becoming happier, launching a dream career, creating impact in the world. Like sometimes people say, oh, this is like too idealistic and it's very dreamy. And I say, look, it's not about right or wrong, or whether I can prove that this is truth or false. I'd rather ask questions. What makes me feel good? What makes you feel good? Does it make you feel good to imagine that the world is a bad place and that nothing works and things are against you and people are idiots? No, it doesn't make me feel good. So then I'd rather believe that the world is a good place and it's a safe place and people are helpful and people are positive and they want the best for me. But can I prove that? No, I cannot. So that is why I say these choices are in our hands as people. What we choose to believe in and what we focus on.
What are you hoping for forward? Like, what are you working towards? What is the next step? What are your future plans?
I want to use the analogy of Blair, is that it's an experiment. It's an experiment. But similar to an experiment, as a scientist, of course, you have a question. So I say, instead of asking what's the outcome, because I don't know the outcome, I would say I want to ask questions that I find interesting, that are going to help me, you know, launch next experiment that is fun and that is exciting. And I would say, you know, the next question would be, how can I help more people? I don't know, but I'm going to figure it out. Yeah. And maybe not help, because help sounds like other people are victims. I don't believe anybody is a victim, but maybe how can I touch more people? How can I connect with more people? How can I, you know, co-create